I think there's a lot of information out there, and I think one thing the Tea Party movement has done since it came from the people themselves is that it's gotten a lot of people doing exactly that kind of research. I think it's clear that this is the most amazing grassroots movement we've seen in the United States in a long time. Some of the work that you have done to get people to go back, read the Constitution, read the founding documents, focus on what the framers meant. It's having an enormous impact. It's not going to happen in one election, but I think these changes underway are going to be the salvation of the country. Okay. Ambassador, I know we have to cut you loose. You have an appointment, so I thank you very much for being with us. Let me go to our British friends. You're both believers in the power of America, right? Yes. Daniel, I know you've written a new book, The New Road to Serfdom, A Letter of Warning to America, which is basically common sense, really, a new common sense. Mm-hmm. Which was, of course, written by another Brit. Not so much. He regretted that whole being born in Great Britain thing. Anyway, you believe in the power of America. I think we all three see and feel what's going on here. There is a great awakening. I believe that we're at the beginning of the third great awakening in America, which will change everything. But they're not going to let go of this power and this opportunity. This is the opportunity these progressives have waited for 100 years, to fundamentally shut the Constitution and cap America's power and go global. What needs to happen? Because you're concerned about one of the things I'm concerned is that we are really going towards inflation. Sure. I mean, this report that you were citing at the beginning, talking about the shift in power from America to Asia, that isn't some natural, inexorable force. This is not like a glacier or a trade wind. It's happening for a reason, a political reason, which you could do something about. And it's very easy to say what that reason is. This country has been encouraged by the Federal Reserve, in common with other Western countries, to consume without producing. Fed policy has been based on the idea that consumption is what drives growth. But actually consumption, of course, is a consequence of growth. You start consuming when there is more that you've produced. I was very alarmed this week to see the Federal Reserve admitting that inflation was its policy. It's now become a stated objective, that this is the best way for them to get rid of the debt which this administration has run up. In other words, that they will debauch private savings in order to erode the public debt that the government has taken on. Now, you can't carry on doing that forever. This is ultimately, if everyone is consuming and no one is producing, if you have inflation, if you have debt, ultimately the wealth will shift to China and to other places which are still making things. Well, basically, I think what you're saying here is if, let's say we are the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers started Standard Oil. If somebody would have come to them, an advisor, and just said, stop all industry, stop everything that's making money, stop your exploration of oil, do nothing. You got to spend all your wealth. And that story kind of happened with the Rockefellers, but they were still producing. Eventually they run out of money. Right. Because they're not making any more money. And that's where we are. We're like the, You have run out of money. We've run out of money. And we now, I mean, we were there, but we just drew back from the brink. We elected a different government that started controlling the deficit. But, this is Zimbabwe economics, the idea that you've got a huge debt, and therefore, rather than trying to live within your means, rather than trying to constrain your expenditure, you print more money. We have run out of money because we're spending too much. Essentially, the welfare states of Europe and North America are broke, and we're borrowing the money from the new wealth creators, which is Asia and China in particular. That cannot go on. But we're also broke in many other ways. We're broke in spirit. We are broke. The system we designed in the last 100 years doesn't work. You can't hold bad teachers in jobs when they're bad. You can't pay pensions to auto workers that you'll never be able, that 40 workers underneath have to work to pay the one pension. But Glenn, wherever you look, everything you're talking about is wildly unpopular. I know that. People are seeing through it. I know that. So let's talk to the people next. We're back
with Stuart Varney and Daniel Hannan, and Stuart and I were talking in the break that he believes everything can be reversed. My concern is that we are setting up a system where we have radicals, revolutionaries that want to destroy America, and they are in powerful positions right now. And I wanted to ask Daniel, because we will survive if we're allowed to survive by the globe. What is the impression of the American people? Because if I were watching from abroad, I would see racist, hate-mongering, crazy, stupid people in television, because that's what it's showing here. Is that the impression?
Pretty much. I mean, if you're talking about what's happening in the run-up to these elections, the view of most foreign media is that the Tea Party is a collection of stump-toothed, bearded Appalachian mountain men with extraordinary views on race and so on. And this raises the issue of why do they keep winning? And there was a great headline online in one of the left-wing papers in Britain, which was, "Unelectable woman wins Delaware primary." Which, she can't have been that unelectable, you know. and the explanation, of course, if you start from that, is, well, this is because Americans must be much more weird and right-wing and kooky than anybody else. Of course, the real explanation is that open primaries allow points of view to be imposed on the rulers, whereas in the rest of the world, politicians are selected by small party committees, and so people have become resigned to not having any say over the direction of policy.
Forgive me, Glenn. I'm bursting here. You have to say that Europe can no longer be considered a Judeo-Christian continent.
No.
It is no longer a spiritual, certainly a Christian society. It is more pagan than anything else. And they look at America, which is a profoundly spiritual society, where religion is a part of many, many people's lives, and they do not understand us, and they are contemptuous of America. That's at the heart of this relationship.
We don't have anybody on our side that is really sending the message of the Statue of Liberty anymore. That, hey, we don't have...
Well, for the reason you gave. I mean, the media in Europe tend to take their cue from the left-wing media here. So first of all, they ignored the whole Tea Party phenomenon. Right. And then when they picked it up, they went from ignoring it to saying these people are insane.
I tell you, I saw a BBC report on me. I was at some place and they said, "Oh, so-and-so from the BBC." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I read the report that he did, and I was surprised. He's better than any journalist here in America on getting the message right. He still don't like me, but he got the message right. Let me go to Charles in the audience. Charles, go ahead.
Yes, we have an election this November. We have another one, 2012. How far down the road do we go before we can reverse some of these global initiatives that are underway?
May I answer that? I'm not sure about the global initiatives, but there are aspects of domestic policy which are easily reversible. Healthcare reform, I do not approve of it. It can be reversed and replaced. Big government spending, stimulus plans, that can be reversed. You don't have to have another one. All kinds of economic policy initiatives of the last 18 months, bailouts, nationalization of various industries, they can be reversed and no new plans put in place.
Read about Woodrow Wilson and Calvin Coolidge. Woodrow Wilson, we are repeating it all. And he went out, he didn't have the UN, he was trying for the League of Nations, and we didn't have personal debt, and we also didn't have, we had industry on our side, and Europe owed us a lot of money. But Calvin Coolidge came in, slashed it in half, cut the taxes in half, and we got the roaring 20s. So don't ever count us out until you count to 10. I got to go to Don here in a second. We'll be right back. We're back with Stuart Varney and Daniel Hannan, the author of The New Road to Serfdom. We want to go to Don, who has a question on how do we get out of this mess.
Well, thank you, Glenn. You know, our countries, China and America, are inextricably linked now economically. What's going to happen when the Chinese auto worker realizes that he doesn't have health insurance, but the fruits of his labor, his country is loaning to the U.S. so that the UAW worker can have his health insurance?
I don't think that health insurance for the UAW worker is going to, I think the standard of living in America, if the globalists have their way, is going to come way down. But I talked to a friend in China who says China is afraid of instability as much as as much as we are. When the Chinese worker realizes, wait, people are getting rich off my back, and if we organize, we have an awful lot of power, that changes the world, does it not?
There's a deal in China. We'll keep quiet. We, the workers, will keep quiet. And you can keep your position as communist rulers of this country.
Right.
In return, you keep us getting more and more prosperous.
Right.
If that deal breaks up, the political deal breaks up.
I've talked to a guy who does a lot of work over in China, and it is, they're building one factory and everybody gets $1.50 an hour, and then when they start to say, wait a minute, the Chinese build another factory in another province for $1.50 an hour and give these guys $5 an hour, which keeps them quiet and they're happy. They eventually will run out of provinces, but that'll take about 5,000 years. George, go ahead.
My wife, Beth, is a career firefighter in the state of New Jersey, and currently their pension fund is $180 billion in the hole. Currently, the new governor, Chris Christie, who was elected, is working his butt off to try to fix that. But how do we fix that and keep that fixed and globalize at the same time?
Those promises that were made cannot be paid. They cannot be fulfilled. You're talking about far too much money. One of several things will have to happen. Either the pension benefits will be cut back dramatically, or there will be enormous cuts in social services in the state of New Jersey so that those pensions can be paid, or the federal government steps in with a bailout of some sort. One of those three things has to happen.
One of those three things is the only one that can happen, and sanity. It requires the union members, not the union leaders, because they'll never get it, just like the politicians. The union members to find a politician like George Washington that they trust, that can say, okay, this guy isn't trying to screw me, that can also broker a deal with the politicians and say, look, we know. So we can have our jobs, and we can have a little bit for those who are right at the edge of retirement, who can't work anymore. And let's take care of the people who are the neediest. But unfortunately, all those promises are going to have to be broken. And it's going to require the union members, correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to require the union members to, man, swallow hard, because you've been lied to and screwed. And swallow hard and say, okay. But that's going to happen with all of us, If anybody thinks it's just the union workers, all of us are going to get hit hard. Our lives are going to change. But that's why I go back to this first question. Who are we? Are we people that say, no, I want mine? Or are we the people that say, okay, crap, like the founders, I will do the right thing. I will do the really hard thing, so my children have the opportunity to create and be free. Back in a minute. We're just talking about being honest about pensions and everything else. And here's a guy who's with the EU and in England. And what did you say about...
I'm pretty unusual for a member of the European
Parliament.
I know that. Any fellow members of the European Parliament here are now shaking their heads in horror. But no, from what I've seen of him, I think Governor Christie is exactly the kind of politician that the founders envisaged. He tells the truth, he doesn't hide, and he takes his oath of office seriously. And
from New York. Good night, America.